Cop confident in court against black woman, until she reveals her role in a powerful U.S. organization. Picture a bustling courtroom on a scorching summer afternoon. A steely-eyed cop sits smugly behind the prosecutor's table, convinced that he's about to notch another easy victory. Across the aisle, a poised black woman, her elegant posture betraying neither fear nor outrage, awaits the proceedings that could forever alter her life. Spectators have packed the gallery to witness this legal clash. Some mutter in disapproval, while others clutch silent hopes for justice. Little do they know that beneath the surface of everyday courtroom formalities lies a harrowing story of betrayal, hidden identities, and shocking truths. By the time the final gavel falls, no one present will remain unchanged. Detective Raymond Ray Bradshaw had witnessed countless arrests during his 10 years with the Springfield Police Department, but tonight felt different. It wasn't because of the circumstances or the neighborhood. He'd made plenty of arrests in the run-down, dimly lit blocks of Maplewood. No. Tonight was different because Ray believed this was the kind of caller that could catapult his career to the next level. He had big ambitions, aiming for the status of captain or maybe even a future run for public office. Arresting an alleged suspect in a violent confrontation would bolster his fearless reputation. The swirling red and blue lights illuminated the cracked asphalt. Nearby street lamps flickered intermittently, casting erratic shadows across the scene. 2 patrol cars formed a shaky blockade, while half a dozen onlookers craned their necks from behind battered fences and grimy windows. The rumor mill would surely spin into action by morning. Ray didn't care. He had a job to do. His partner, Officer Diana Kendrick, stood a few steps behind, eyes flicking over every detail. The bullet casings scattered on the ground, the shattered car window, and the battered sedan parked at a crooked angle. Inside that sedan was Ebony Turner, mid-30s with delicate features and a composure that struck Ray as eerie for someone who had just been found at the scene of an altercation. She sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, waiting, as though anticipating an announcement that would command her next move. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Ray said, inching closer, gun drawn but not pointed. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to taste. Ebony complied, her face betraying no panic. "You've made a mistake," she said, voice calm, almost too calm. Ray didn't like that. A typical suspect would be shouting denials, crying, or cowering in fear. Her stillness, her unwavering gaze made him uneasy. He nodded at Diana, who holstered her own weapon and moved to open the driver's side door. Ebony offered no resistance as Diana pulled her out of the vehicle and pressed her hands behind her back. "We got a call about shots fired," Ray announced. "Your car matches the description." Ebony turned her head slightly, enough to let Ray catch the glint of determination in her eyes. "I didn't fire any shots." Ray exhaled sharply. He'd heard every excuse in the book: mistaken identity, self-defense, outright denial. "Is that so? Witness says otherwise." Ebony's silence in response only fueled Ray's confidence. He motioned to Diana to finish cuffing Ebony. This quiet suspect was going to make things easy for him. She had no weapon on her, but the shell casings and the bullet hole in the side of her car told a story. Perhaps Ebony had tossed the gun, or handed it off to someone else. In Ray's mind, her guilt was certain. As Ebony was guided to the patrol car, the onlookers hovered. Some held phones, recording or taking pictures. An older woman shouted, "Let her go, she ain't done nothing." But Ray ignored them all. The only thing that mattered was collecting enough evidence to ensure Ebony would be booked. That was the next step. When Ebony was finally seated in the back of the cruiser, Ray stepped aside to talk to Diana. She recounted that the anonymous 911 call described a woman in a dark sedan exchanging fire with someone near a convenience store. Ebony Turner's black sedan had been the only one in the vicinity. "This is almost too neat," Diana muttered, tapping her foot. "We don't even have a victim, do we?" Ray sighed. No body, no injured party. Maybe the other person fled. This area is no stranger to gang violence. She could have been in a shootout. "Could be," Diana said, her tone edged with skepticism. "But we have no weapon." Ray shrugged. She looks guilty enough, and we'll figure out the details once we get her to the station. A part of him, the seasoned detective, knew that any number of explanations could exist for Ebony's presence. Yet the larger, more ambitious part of him chose to see Ebony Turner as exactly who he needed her to be, a criminal whose arrest would look good on his record. Sometimes it wasn't about the truth. It was about building your case. The night ended with Ebony in a holding cell, Ray completing the official report, and a faint sense of triumph settling over him. He didn't realize that with each keystroke on the report, he was weaving a web that would eventually trap him. Ebony Turner, calm, composed Ebony Turner, wasn't the defenseless suspect he believed her to be. Ray left the precinct in the early hours, his mind already spinning with the possibilities of how this case might advance his career. Unaware that across town, behind steel bars, Ebony Turner sat quietly, her thoughts arranged with military precision, planning her next move. Ray woke the next day feeling an uncharacteristic bounce in his step. The early morning sunlight streaming through his bedroom window seemed to promise a bright future. He quickly dressed, donned his badge, and hurried out the door, ignoring the slight pang in his stomach that told him he was skipping breakfast. At the station, he found officers finishing their night shift, the tired lines on their faces a testament to another grueling night in Springfield. He headed straight for the records department, eager to see if Ebony Turner had any prior charges. If she was a repeat offender, his case was even stronger. To his surprise, Ebony Turner's file came up empty. No arrests, no misdemeanors, not even a parking ticket. She was squeaky clean. That unsettled him. Typically, people involved in shootouts had some record, even if it was tangential. Maybe Ebony was an exception, or maybe she was adept at staying invisible. While he waited for an update from forensics about the bullet casings found at the scene, Ray decided to check Ebony's place of employment. After some cross-referencing, he discovered that Ebony Turner worked at a local philanthropic organization downtown. The name, the Unity Foundation, was well known for raising scholarships and grants for underprivileged kids. The director, Linda Kapoor, was something of a saint in the community. Ebony's position was listed as Program Coordinator. Ray scoffed at his screen. A philanthropic do-gooder, involved in a shootout? Something wasn't adding up. He considered that Ebony might be living a double life. Charity worker by day, gunslinging accomplice by night. Wouldn't be the first time someone wore a mask for society. Determined to find more, Ray scrolled through Ebony's personal data. She rented a modest apartment in a decent area. No record of a spouse or children. No upcoming court cases or civil suits. She had a stable bank account, the transactions primarily related to her job. Nothing screamed criminal. His phone buzzed. "Bradshaw," he answered. It was forensics. The bullet casings matched a .38 revolver, but that was hardly shocking. Guns of that caliber flooded the streets. They also found Ebony's fingerprints on her sedan's trunk, obviously, but no prints on any firearms or bullet casings. With no direct evidence tying Ebony to a weapon, the prosecution might find it difficult to secure a conviction. Ray gritted his teeth. His strong sense of certainty from the night before was beginning to crack around the edges. He still believed Ebony was involved. There had to be some reason she was there. But the facts weren't lining up as nicely as he'd hoped. He decided to pay Ebony a visit in the holding cell. Maybe a face-to-face interrogation would crack her veneer. Entering the dimly lit area of the precinct where the cells were, Ray passed the rows of locked doors until he reached Ebony's. She was seated on the small cot, hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked up, and for a fleeting moment Ray imagined he saw pity in her eyes, pity for him. He squared his shoulders. "So, Ebony Turner," he began, testing out the name. "You're a program coordinator at a charity and have no criminal record. Want to explain what you were doing in a shootout?" She raised an eyebrow. "I already told you. I wasn't involved in any shootout." Ray waited for more, but she remained silent. "We found you at the scene. Witnesses claim you were there when shots were fired." "A single witness," Ebony corrected, "who called anonymously. Are you sure there was even a second shooter?" Her tone was composed, even curious, as if she were speaking to a colleague rather than the detective trying to build a case against her. Ray couldn't help but feel like the balance of power was off. Typically, detainees pleaded for mercy, asked for attorneys, or spouted defensive ramblings. Ebony wasn't doing any of that. She was simply stating observations. He shrugged. "We have enough to hold you for now." She met his gaze. "I'm sure you do. But that doesn't make me guilty." Ray tried to maintain his authoritative stance, but Ebony's calm demeanor was unnerving. He found himself rattled, though he wouldn't show it. "If there's something you want to tell me, I'm listening." She paused, then offered a cryptic smile. "Detective, you have a job to do, and I respect that. But I promise you this is all a misunderstanding, one that's going to come to light very soon." His frustration flared. "Your best bet is to cooperate, otherwise charges will be filed." She nodded as though considering the statement, but said nothing further. Ray left the cell feeling a swirl of emotions. Ebony Turner was either the best liar he had ever encountered, or she truly was innocent. Yet, if she were innocent, why wasn't she more desperate to prove her innocence? Why didn't she volunteer an alibi or name a suspect? The seeds of doubt were planted, but Ray pushed them away. He had a gut instinct that Ebony was involved in something bigger. He would remain confident, keep building the case, and let the courts do their work. After all, it was Ebony's life on the line, not his, or so he believed. That afternoon, Ebony's attorney arrived at the precinct. Her name was Charlotte Wilson, a tall, imposing figure with sharp eyes and an even sharper wit. She wore a charcoal gray suit that demanded respect. Ray had dealt with his share of defense attorneys, but Charlotte exuded a presence that stood out. She wasted no time. "I'm here to see my client, Ebony Turner," Charlotte announced to the desk sergeant. Within minutes, she was led to a private interrogation room, where Ebony waited quietly. Ray observed them through the one-way glass. He saw Charlotte lean in, speak in hushed tones, and Ebony responding with calm sincerity. At one point, Ebony's eyes flicked up to meet Ray's reflection in the glass. It was a fleeting glance, but it conveyed something akin to reassurance, as if she was telling Ray she wasn't afraid. A few moments later, Charlotte emerged, fixing Ray with a stare that told him she was ready for a battle. "Detective Bradshaw, correct?" she said, extending a hand. He took it, though he immediately felt her grip was not for pleasantries. It was a statement of her resolve. "That's right. I'd like to see the evidence you have against my client," Charlotte demanded. "I assume it's compelling enough for you to hold a respected community leader overnight." He bristled at her insinuation. "We have witness testimony placing her at the scene of a shootout. We found bullet casings and a bullet hole in her car." Charlotte nodded, unperturbed. "And where's the weapon? Any eyewitnesses to her firing said weapon." Ray tightened his jaw. "We're working on that." She pursed her lips. "I see. While you're working on that, I'd like Ebony released on bail." Ray shook his head. "She's a flight risk." Charlotte's eyebrows shot up. "A flight risk? My client has no record, a full-time job with the Unity Foundation and roots in this city. I'd love to hear your rationale." Before Ray could respond, the door behind them opened, revealing Assistant District Attorney Michael Hawthorne. He was a middle-aged, slick-suited man known for his zero-tolerance approach. "Bradshaw, I'm taking over from here." Ray stepped aside, letting Hawthorne and Charlotte talk. Their exchange was a volley of legal jargon, each citing statutes and case precedents. Eventually, Hawthorne announced that while Ebony would remain in custody a bit longer, they'd consider the bail request after an initial hearing. He had to review the evidence thoroughly before deciding. As Charlotte walked away, she cast Ray a look that said, "This isn't over." Ray felt a pang of irritation. He hated how defense attorneys always seemed so certain of their client's innocence. But Ebony's composure and Charlotte's steely resolve were unsettling. He buried his doubts, telling himself again that everything would soon fall into place. After the lawyer's visit, Ebony was returned to her cell, with no sign of panic or distress. Ray checked the day's schedule and saw that Ebony's bail hearing was set for the next day. He hoped new evidence would surface before then, evidence to confirm his suspicion that Ebony was more involved than she let on. Later, Ray found himself sitting at his cluttered desk, scanning over the initial police report once more. He couldn't shake the feeling that something crucial was missing. The anonymous caller's words echoed in his mind. Shots fired. Black sedan. Woman at the scene. He wondered who that caller was. Usually, at least in Maplewood, anonymous calls came from people too scared to be identified, often worried about retaliation from gangs. Yet there was something about this particular call. No mention of Ebony's appearance beyond her gender, no mention of other vehicles leaving the scene, and no willingness to provide further details. Ray jotted a note to himself to look deeper into that call. In major cases, investigating the source of a 911 tip was standard. But in a routine violent crime, it sometimes got pushed to the bottom of the to-do list. This was no longer a routine case, if it ever was. His phone buzzed, a text from his partner, Diana. "We've got a lead on the store's security footage. Meet you in the squad room." Ray got up and headed there, weaving through the maze of desks. The squad room was abuzz with the daily hum of activity. Phones ringing, typed reports, suspects being let in for questioning. He spotted Diana at a computer, queuing up video footage from the convenience store near the crime scene. She motioned him over. "All right, let's see what we have." They watched the footage. The camera showed the store's entrance, the gas pumps, and part of the street. The timestamp matched the approximate time of the shooting. Then, a black sedan came into view, Ebony's sedan. Ebony emerged from the driver's seat, walked toward the store entrance, but halfway there she paused and looked down the street. Her posture suggested alarm or concern. Moments later, the camera view shook slightly, possibly from the report of gunshots off-screen. Ebony immediately retreated back to her car. Ray leaned in. "So she hears shots and gets back in her car." Diana nodded. "That's what it looks like. She doesn't seem to be firing anything." The video continued. Ebony hurried to her car's driver's side door, ducking at one point as if bullets were whizzing by. Another sedan, a silver one, briefly appeared on the edge of the frame, then vanished. The footage ended without capturing any actual shooters. Ray exhaled. This doesn't prove she fired shots. Could the bullet hole in her car be from stray gunfire? Diana shrugged. It's possible. In fact, from this angle, she looks like she's trying to avoid getting shot, not returning fire. Confusion simmered in Ray's mind. The evidence seemed to suggest Ebony might be innocent, and yet they had an anonymous witness claiming otherwise. Why would someone point the finger at Ebony Turner? Could it be a setup? Diana asked, echoing Ray's silent question. He rubbed his temples. I don't know, but we need more. Let's see if we can track down that silver sedan, or if the store's interior cameras picked up anything else. Deep down, Ray's certainty was crumbling. He hated the idea that he might have arrested an innocent woman. A mistake like that could ruin a life, and a career. But he still held on to the hope that Ebony was hiding something. Her calmness in the face of arrest, the cryptic statements. There had to be more to her story. Stepping away from the screen, Ray told Diana to retrieve more footage if possible. He also planned to revisit the site of the shooting, maybe speak to residents who might have seen something. If Ebony was indeed innocent, then who was behind framing her? And if she was guilty, how far did her connections go? The next morning, Ebony appeared in court for her bail hearing. Ray sat a few rows behind the prosecution, arms folded, scanning the crowd. He spotted Ebony, head held high, flanked by Charlotte Wilson. A mixture of onlookers filled the wooden benches. Curious neighbors, Ebony's co-workers from the Unity Foundation, even a few local journalists who sniffed a potentially big story. Judge Harriet McNamara, known for her no-nonsense demeanor, took the bench. With a firm rap of the gavel, she called the session to order. Assistant District Attorney Hawthorne rose to present the state's case. Ebony Turner was found at the scene of a shootout. Bullet casings matched a .38 revolver. An anonymous witness identified her as the shooter, and she posed a flight risk. Charlotte countered that there was no direct evidence tying Ebony to a firearm. Ebony had no prior criminal record, and the store's security footage suggested Ebony was fleeing from gunfire rather than participating in it. She also pointed out Ebony's stable employment, community ties, and willingness to cooperate. Judge McNamara reviewed the arguments. Her gaze drifted momentarily to Ebony, who met her eyes with unwavering composure. Finally, the judge spoke. Given the evidence at this stage, I see insufficient proof that Miss Turner fired any weapon. Additionally, she appears to be a long-standing member of this community with strong ties. Bail is set at $10,000. Ebony closed her eyes in relief, while Charlotte offered a small nod of gratitude to the judge. Hawthorne looked displeased, but he couldn't argue. Ray watched as Ebony stepped from the defendant's table, her chin still lifted, and was led out by a court officer to finalize her release. Though Ray felt an odd sense of relief that Ebony wouldn't be locked away if she was innocent, he also felt the sting of humiliation. The case he'd championed was quickly dissolving. He walked outside the courthouse, slipping on sunglasses against the mid-morning glare. He needed to think. Standing under the courthouse's massive columns, Ray lit a cigarette, an old habit that flared up during stressful times. He noticed Ebony and Charlotte exiting the building. They spoke briefly, then Ebony turned in his direction. For a moment they locked eyes. She gave him a polite nod, neither triumphant nor resentful, then moved on. The image lingered with Ray for several minutes. He realized Ebony wasn't just calm, she was prepared. That kind of composure wasn't common among the general population, let alone those who had faced a night in jail. Ray decided he needed to dig deeper, beyond her place of work and that spotless record. Ebony had layers he hadn't uncovered yet. Returning to the station, he called an old friend, Marcus West, who worked with the local FBI office. Marcus picked up on the second ring. "Bradshaw, long time. What's up?" Ray didn't delve into details yet. "Need you to run a deeper background check on someone. Ebony Turner. Lives in Springfield, works for the Unity Foundation." Marcus's tone turned serious. "Is she a suspect?" "Potentially. Or maybe she's a victim. I'm not sure yet. I just need to know if anything is off the record or sealed." Marcus agreed to dig around and let Ray know what he found. The call ended. Ray felt a flicker of guilt for using an FBI contact to investigate Ebony in ways that might be outside standard police procedures. But the more he learned about Ebony, the more crucial it seemed to find out who she really was. Ebony's release sent ripples through the community. Some championed her as a victim of racial profiling by an overzealous cop. Others whispered conspiracies, claiming Ebony was part of a powerful organization that pulled strings behind the scenes. Social media lit up with hashtags of #HashFreeEbony, while the local news aired interviews of Maplewood residents who questioned the police department's actions. 3 days after her bail hearing, Ebony sat at a quiet picnic table in Willow Park. The late afternoon sun shimmered through oak trees, creating dancing patterns on the grass. She brushed away stray leaves on the table, then checked her phone. A text message from her boss, Linda Kapoor, read, "Please keep me updated, we're all behind you." Ebony smiled at the vote of support. A moment later, a woman in a modest black blazer approached. She was in her late 40s, her hair styled in neat waves. Ebony greeted her warmly. "Hello, Detective Johnson." The woman offered a friendly nod. "Ebony, you're looking well, all things considered." They sat. Detective Grace Johnson wasn't just any detective. She was part of an internal investigations unit within the FBI, dedicated to rooting out corruption that could slip under local law enforcement's radar. Ebony's role, though mostly unknown even to her own colleagues at the Unity Foundation, involved assisting such specialized teams. But that secret was carefully guarded. "So," Detective Johnson began, "I heard about your run-in with Springfield PD." Ebony sighed, tucking a lock of hair behind her ear. "Yes, it was unexpected. Someone deliberately called the police to incriminate me. We need to find out who." "That's exactly why I'm here," Johnson replied. glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "We suspect that your undercover work might be compromised." Undercover. That single word carried so much weight. For the past year, Ebony had been subtly assisting the FBI in investigating ties between local gangs and corrupt officials. Through her philanthropic work, she'd gained the trust of communities often overlooked by the system. She'd passed along tips, helped locate missing individuals, and guided the FBI in identifying potential dirty cops, though she rarely knew their names. Johnson cleared her throat. "We have reason to believe that Detective Raymond Bradshaw isn't crooked. He's just overzealous. But there's someone else within the police department who might be on a gang's payroll. They could have orchestrated the false witness call." Ebony's eyes hardened. I had no choice but to keep quiet about my real role. If I admitted I work with the FBI, it could blow the entire operation. Johnson nodded. "Yes, and you did the right thing. But we need to figure out who set you up and why. Meanwhile, we'll do our best to shield you. But be cautious. If they learn you're connected to us, you'll be in danger." Ebony's heart quickened. Detective Bradshaw is determined to make me a scapegoat. I see his doubt, but he's also ambitious. He wants a big win. Johnson tapped her pen on the table thoughtfully. "Keep up your calm front. The less he suspects you have powerful allies, the more he'll slip up around you. If we can find out who's pulling the strings at the PD, we can exonerate you publicly, and also dismantle the network behind your frame-up." Ebony breathed in the cool park air, feeling both relief and mounting pressure. Understood. They discussed a plan. Ebony would continue her normal routine, allow the legal process to unfold, and discreetly relay any suspicious activity or contact to Johnson. The FBI would quietly investigate. Officially, Ebony Turner was just another defendant waiting for trial. Off the record, she was a key asset in a widening corruption probe. As they parted ways, Ebony's resolve deepened. She couldn't let fear or anger cloud her judgment. An entire community depended on her philanthropic programs. But now she realized her role was even bigger than she'd initially believed. If she played her cards right, she wouldn't just clear her name. She'd expose the corrupt figures who had turned her life upside down. Walking away from the park, Ebony felt the weight of her hidden identity pressing on her shoulders. She glanced at the courthouse in the distance, a foreboding silhouette against the sky. Trial day was approaching, and with it, the threat of her secret coming to light. One thing was certain. If Detective Ray Bradshaw thought he had her cornered, he was in for a shocking revelation. Detective Ray Bradshaw was not a man accustomed to feeling cornered. But as the days wore on, the pieces of the Ebony Turner puzzle refused to fit neatly into place. The security footage, the lack of a weapon, and Ebony's composure all pointed toward her innocence. Yet his gut nagged at him. There had to be more. One evening, Ray sat at his kitchen table with an open laptop, reviewing the case files. An untouched plate of reheated leftovers grew cold beside him. He glanced at his phone for the 10th time, hoping for a message from his FBI contact, Marcus West. So far, Marcus hadn't returned his calls. Suddenly, the phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Stop digging, you're barking up the wrong tree." He frowned. Spam? Or a threat? He typed back, "Who is this?" No reply came. A chill crept through him. Someone was paying attention to his investigation. The next day at the precinct, Ray approached the call logs department to ask about tracing the 911 tip that led to Ebony's arrest. The clerk, an older man with a receding hairline, apologetically explained that the call came from a burner phone, a dead end. Frustrated, Ray was heading back to his desk when his phone finally buzzed with a call from Marcus. "Bradshaw, you asked me to look into Ebony Turner," Marcus said in a hushed tone. "Yes. Thanks for getting back to me. Find anything?" Marcus hesitated. "Well, she's got a file that's sealed at the federal level. I can't access it, and my superiors told me to drop the inquiry." Ray's grip on the phone tightened. "Drop it? Why?" "They wouldn't say just that Ebony Turner is off limits. You didn't hear this from me, Bradshaw, but I'm warning you. Someone high up wants her protected." The line went dead. Ray stood in the hallway, phone in hand, mind racing. Ebony had a sealed federal file, high-level protection. This changed everything. If Ebony was truly innocent, then maybe the case was bigger than a simple shooting. And if Ebony was part of something larger, his role in arresting her could have massive consequences for him and the department. That evening, Ray visited Ebony's apartment building. Officially, he was there to see if any neighbors had witnessed suspicious activity the night of her arrest. Unofficially, he wanted to see Ebony in her own environment, perhaps glean some insight into who she really was. He knocked on her door. Several seconds passed before the door opened, revealing Ebony in a simple blouse and jeans. She looked surprised to see him. "Detective Bradshaw," she greeted. "Are you here on official business?" He cleared his throat. "I'm following up on your case. I thought I'd see if you or your neighbors recalled any details about that night." Ebony stepped aside, letting him in. The apartment was cozy, tastefully decorated with modern art prints, bookshelves filled with everything from classic literature to political biographies. A few framed photographs of Ebony with smiling children at community events adorned the walls. "No new details," she said, motioning for him to sit on a small sofa. "I've told you everything I know." Ray glanced around, noting the tidiness and the sense of stability. "Mind if I ask a personal question?" Ebony's posture tensed, but she remained polite. "Go ahead." "Why are you so calm about all this? Most people falsely accused of a crime would be panicking." She studied him, and for a moment Ray saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "Detective, not everyone wears their emotions the same way. I'm concerned, believe me. But I also know the truth will come out if the system works as it should." Ray nodded, pressing forward. "Are you sure there's nothing else you want to tell me? If someone set you up, if there's more to your story, it might help." Her jaw tightened, and she chose her words carefully. "Let me ask you something, Detective. If I told you I had resources that prove my innocence, would you believe me? Or would you see it as an excuse?" He hesitated. "I want the truth, Miss Turner, whether it confirms or denies my assumptions." Behind the scenes, Detective Grace Johnson and her FBI colleagues were making progress. Late one evening, they trailed a suspicious car connected to a known gang leader, Rico Alvarado, who had been expanding his territory in Springfield. The car belonged to a low-level police officer named Sean Miller, assigned to the same precinct as Ray Bradshaw. Miller had a reputation for skirting departmental rules, small infractions, petty misconduct, but nothing that had ever stuck. Johnson's sources hinted that Miller was the one funneling crucial police intel to Alvarado's gang. If Ebony's philanthropic work had uncovered these criminal ties, it would make sense for the gang to frame her, effectively discrediting her as a reliable informant. After discreet surveillance, Johnson discovered a clandestine meeting between Miller and one of Alvarado's henchmen. Money exchanged hands, and an envelope changed possession. Johnson snapped photos from her unmarked vehicle, heart pounding. She couldn't move yet. She needed more evidence. Meanwhile, Ebony, oblivious to these new developments, focused on preparing for her upcoming court date. She maintained her daily routine, working at the Unity Foundation, meeting with her legal counsel, checking in with Detective Johnson when safe. One afternoon, Ebony was reviewing scholarship applications at the Foundation's cozy conference room. Her boss, Linda Kapoor, entered with a compassionate smile. "Ebony, how are you holding up?" Ebony rubbed her temples. "I'm okay, Linda. Just ready for the truth to come out." Linda patted her shoulder. "We have a big fundraiser next week. You've always been the heart of these events. If you're up to it, I'd love for you to handle the planning." A year ago, Ebony would have leapt at the opportunity, but now her mind was 1,000 miles away, entangled in legal drama and hidden conspiracies. Still, she nodded. Of course, the show must go on. She needed to appear as normal as possible. Any deviation from her routine might alert those responsible for setting her up. The best disguise was to act the way she always had, hardworking, optimistic, and dedicated to the community. Meanwhile, at the police precinct, Ray received a sealed envelope at his desk. No return address. Inside, he found a single photograph. Ebony leaving a meeting room at a known FBI field office. No date, no context. Beneath the photo was a typed note. "Are you sure she's innocent?" Ray's pulse raced. This confirmed Ebony had ties to the federal government. Why was the note's sender trying to nudge Ray back into doubting her? Could Ebony be playing both sides? Or was someone trying to stoke his suspicions to keep him off the real trail? He marched straight to his captain's office, brandishing the photo. Captain Lisa Mueller frowned deeply. "Where did you get this?" "Delivered to my desk. No return address," Ray replied, frustration burning in his eyes. Mueller examined the photo. "It could be doctored, but if not, Ebony Turner might be more than she seems." Ray felt a pang of guilt, remembering how Ebony had declared her innocence so calmly. "Captain, maybe she's working with the FBI. That could mean she's trying to expose something or someone in our department." Mueller's gaze sharpened. "Like corruption?" Ray nodded slowly. "Yes, possibly." Mueller stood, crossing to the window that overlooked the busy street. "This is a risky path, Detective. If Ebony is working undercover, we have bigger problems than a simple shooting." Ray gritted his teeth. "I want to do what's right, Captain." She turned to face him. "Then tread carefully. If we expose Ebony's possible role prematurely, we could compromise her and any federal operation. Meanwhile, we need to find out who sent this photo." Ray left the office with a swirling mix of questions and a newfound sense of responsibility. If Ebony was indeed an undercover operative, he owed it to himself and to justice to protect her. But he also had to figure out who within the department might be trying to sabotage her and manipulate him in the process. The day of Ebony's preliminary hearing arrived under gray skies and a steady drizzle. The courthouse steps glistened with rainwater. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Journalists shuffled about, adjusting cameras, and concerned citizens filled the gallery seats. Ebony sat at the defense table, Charlotte at her side. On the prosecution's side was ADA Hawthorne, flipping through papers. Detective Ray Bradshaw was seated behind him, tugging at his collar. He had prepared a testimony about the night of the arrest, but the new doubts clouded his mind. Should he present the facts as he initially understood them, or share his suspicions that Ebony might be a federal asset? When the judge entered, everyone rose. The hearing began. Hawthorne summarized the state's case. Ebony was at the scene of a crime. Bullet casings matched a .38 revolver typically used in gang-related shootings, and an anonymous caller identified her as the shooter. Charlotte responded with a calm but firm rebuttal. Ebony was a community leader with no criminal record. The store's footage showed she likely fled from gunfire rather than initiated it, and the state had not produced any credible witness to testify against Ebony. Finally, Ray was called to the stand. He recounted his arrival on the scene, the shell casings, and Ebony's arrest. Charlotte then cross-examined him. "Detective Bradshaw, did you personally witness Miss Turner firing a weapon?" she asked. Ray shook his head, throat tight. "No. She was seated in her vehicle when I found her." "Did you recover a weapon from Miss Turner or her car?" "No," he admitted. "And can you confirm that the bullet hole in her car could have been from stray gunfire?" Ray paused, glancing at Ebony. "Yes, that's a possibility." Charlotte pressed on. "Have you discovered any motive for Miss Turner to fire a weapon at anyone that night?" Ray hesitated. "Not definitively, no." Charlotte allowed a moment's silence for the weight of his testimony to sink in. "Thank you, Detective," she said, stepping away. Hawthorne didn't look pleased. He recognized the holes in the state's case, but he forged ahead, calling on a forensics analyst who stated that the gunfire likely originated near Ebony's car, though he couldn't confirm Ebony had fired the shots. By midday, the hearing concluded. The judge informed the court that she would review the evidence and decide whether there was enough probable cause for a trial. With that, the session ended, and Ebony was free to go for the time being. True to predictions, the judge dismissed Ebony's case due to insufficient evidence. The media covered it briefly, then moved on. But beneath the surface, tensions in Springfield were far from resolved. Ebony returned to her normal life, or at least the semblance of it, while Ray dug into the suspicious elements surrounding her arrest. One afternoon, Ebony organized the upcoming fundraiser at the Unity Foundation. Banners were strung up in the courtyard, volunteers arranged tables with silent auction items, and local caterers set up a small buffet. Ebony supervised quietly, occasionally lost in thought about the real threat lurking in the shadows. Shortly before the event began, Ebony's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered tentatively. "Hello?" A raspy voice spoke. "Thought you got away scot-free. You won't be so lucky next time." The line clicked dead. Ebony swallowed, heart pounding. She immediately texted Detective Johnson. "Just got a threat from a burner number." Johnson replied, "Stay calm, we have a team nearby." For Ebony, it was a stark reminder that she wasn't safe, even with the charges dropped. Someone still wanted her out of the picture. Meanwhile, across town, Ray zeroed in on Officer Miller. Through quiet inquiries, he learned that Miller frequented bars associated with Rico Alvarado's gang. Ray also spoke to a confidential informant who hinted that Miller was paid to feed the gang inside information, like upcoming raids or vulnerable drug routes. It wouldn't be far-fetched for Miller to orchestrate Ebony's arrest if she threatened the gang's interests. One evening, Ray followed Miller to a dingy sports bar near the city limits. The flicker of neon signs in the window revealed silhouettes inside. Ray parked a safe distance away and watched from the darkness. Miller emerged an hour later, chatting with a large, tattooed man who Ray recognized from police mugshots as Alvarado's lieutenant. The handshake, the slip of an envelope, it was all the confirmation Ray needed. Ray snapped photos, adrenaline pumping. He knew this was just a piece of the puzzle, but it was a crucial one. If Ebony's philanthropic work exposed something about Alvarado's network, Miller might have set her up to protect his own secrets. As Ebony was whisked away to greet the mayor, Ray felt a surge of admiration for her resilience. She had endured injustice with poise, determined to keep helping her community. Standing alone in the lively courtyard, Ray realized that his role had shifted. He wasn't just the arresting officer trying to prove Ebony's guilt. He was now an ally in her quest for justice. But as the evening's festivities continued, neither of them sensed that the final act of betrayal was about to unfold, exposing the deepest layers of corruption and leading to a karmic reckoning none could have anticipated. The fundraiser was in full swing. Soft jazz music floated in the background, mingling with laughter and the clink of glasses. Donors browsed silent auction items, everything from local art to weekend getaways. The crowd included community leaders, business owners, even some local celebrities who had come to support the Unity Foundation's mission. Ebony circulated through the room, greeting guests and thanking them for their generosity. In between conversations, she caught glimpses of Ray, who lingered near the edges of the event, carefully observing. She also spotted Linda Kapoor chatting animatedly with the mayor. All seemed to be going smoothly until Ebony noticed a commotion near the entrance. A large man in a dark hoodie had slipped past the check-in table, weaving through guests with urgency. Something about his demeanor, tense, scanning the crowd, sent alarm bells ringing in Ebony's mind. She recognized him as one of Rico Alvarado's known associates, a man she had seen in a photo from her FBI briefing. Quietly, Ebony maneuvered through the throng, approaching Ray. "We've got trouble," she murmured, tilting her head discreetly toward the intruder. Ray's eyes followed her signal. His hand instinctively moved toward his concealed weapon, though he didn't draw it yet. "I see him. Let's keep calm. We don't want to scare the guests." The man spotted Ebony and began to stride purposefully toward her, a dark glint in his eyes. She felt her pulse spike. Ray stepped forward, blocking the man's path. "Sir, do you have an invitation?" Ray asked, trying to keep his tone polite but firm. The man sneered, pushing Ray aside with surprising force. "I'm here for the lady," guests began to murmur, confusion rippling through the once festive atmosphere. Ebony stood her ground, desperately hoping not to incite a panic. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice calm but resolute. He flashed a menacing grin. "Got a message for you, Ebony Turner. You're meddling in business that doesn't concern you." The tension snapped like a coiled spring. Before anyone could react, the man reached inside his hoodie. Ray lunged, grabbing for the man's wrist. A brief struggle ensued. In the chaos, a gunshot echoed, sending shrieks through the crowd. People dove for cover, tables overturned, glass shattered. When the shot rang out, Ebony instinctively ducked, her heart pounding. She heard Ray shout, "Gun! Everybody down!" Another shot fired, ricocheting off a nearby column. Fear surged as Ebony realized the intruder was desperately trying to get a clear shot at her. A split second later, Ray pinned the intruder's hand. With a swift maneuver, Ray disarmed him, the gun clattering to the floor. Security guards rushed in, subduing the assailant and dragging him outside where the police had begun to arrive, alerted by frantic 911 calls. Panting, Ray scanned the crowd for Ebony. He found her crouched behind a table, trembling. "Ebony!" He ran to her, helping her stand. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, voice shaky. "No, I'm fine, thanks to you." Linda Kapoor rushed over, tears in her eyes. "Ebony! Oh my God, are you okay?" Ebony hugged Linda, ensuring her friend she wasn't injured. Within minutes, the fundraiser turned into a crime scene. Flashing red and blue lights illuminated the building's exterior. Officers cordoned off the area, took statements, and escorted shocked guests outside. The once celebratory courtyard was strewn with broken dishes, scattered tablecloths, and shattered glasses. Detective Grace Johnson arrived, blending in with local law enforcement. She locked eyes with Ebony, a silent question hanging in the air. Ebony nodded, indicating she was all right. Johnson then approached Ray, who was giving a statement to a patrol officer. "Detective Bradshaw," Johnson said, showing her FBI credentials discreetly. "I'm Detective Grace Johnson with a joint task force. Thank you for intervening tonight." Ray recognized her name from Ebony's subtle hints. "Glad I could help. But who is that guy?" Johnson glanced toward the patrol car where the intruder was being detained. "A foot soldier for Rico Alvarado. Looks like they wanted to silence Miss Turner once and for all." Ray swallowed. They must have known their plan to frame her failed. Johnson nodded grimly. "Yes, we've been tracking them for a while. Ebony was helping us gather intel through her community work. Alvarado's gang and certain corrupt officers see her as a threat." Ray's eyes flickered with realization. "So Ebony really is working with the feds." Johnson confirmed it with a curt nod. "She's been an asset for over a year." As the night wore on, the fundraiser site transformed into a fully active police scene. Ebony provided a statement to Detective Johnson, carefully omitting direct references to her deeper FBI connection in the official record. Ray hovered nearby, occasionally locking eyes with Ebony in silent support. Though shaken, Ebony's resolve remained intact. One thing was certain: the circle of corruption was about to be exposed. Miller's betrayal, Alvarado's violent tactics, everything was converging. Ray realized this was more than just a personal redemption. It was the right thing to do. And for Ebony, it was the start of clearing her name in a far more public and definitive manner than any court hearing could achieve. 2 days later, before sunrise, law enforcement mobilized across the city. The FBI, Springfield PD's Internal Affairs Unit, and select trusted officers, Ray among them, executed simultaneous raids to bring down Rico Alvarado's gang and any corrupt officials within the police department. The operation had been planned swiftly but meticulously, thanks to the evidence Ebony and Detective Johnson had painstakingly gathered. Officer Miller was the first to go. He was pulled from his squad car at the start of his shift, stunned to see Ray standing among the arresting officers. Miller spat curses, denying everything until confronted with photographic proof of his meetings with Alvarado's men. He was cuffed and taken into custody, face contorted in rage. Simultaneously, FBI teams moved on Alvarado's known hideouts. Ramshackle houses in Maplewood served as stash points for drugs and firearms. SWAT teams breached doors, flashbang grenades illuminating the early morning gloom. Alvarado's henchmen scrambled, but the element of surprise and superior numbers overwhelmed them. Gunfire erupted in pockets of resistance, but the assault was swift and decisive. Detective Ray joined the unit that descended upon Alvarado's main compound, a fortified warehouse near the outskirts of the city. After a tense standoff, tear gas forced the remaining gang members to surrender. Rico Alvarado himself was found barricaded in an office, armed to the teeth. Nonetheless, he was taken alive after a brief shootout. By mid-morning, the city streets were filled with police vehicles, FBI vans, and media trucks, each capturing the dramatic culmination of the raid. Social media exploded with news updates, while anxious citizens peered from windows or turned on their TVs, learning that a major criminal network had been dismantled overnight. Inside the warehouse, Ray took a moment to catch his breath amid the swirling dust. He spotted Detective Johnson directing agents to secure evidence. Alvarado was led out in handcuffs, his expression a mix of fury and defeat. "Nice work, Detective," Johnson said, offering Ray a rare grin. "We've been chasing this syndicate for years. Thanks to Ebony's inside information and your willingness to follow the truth, we got them." Ray exhaled, the weight of relief washing over him. "How's Ebony? Is she safe?" Johnson nodded. "She's at a secure location. This was dangerous for her, so we kept her off site." Ray felt a pang of worry, but also gratitude that Ebony hadn't been placed in the line of fire. "I want to see her, make sure she's all right." "In due time," Johnson replied with a smile. "She'll be meeting with the U.S. Attorney's Office to finalize her statement. The Department of Justice wants to ensure all her work remains classified until the right moment." Ray understood. Ebony's covert role could continue to serve as a template for future investigations, so they needed to protect her identity from public disclosure. Still, he found himself eager to talk to her, to confirm that this nightmare was truly over. News of Officer Miller's arrest rocked the Springfield Police Department. Headlines screamed corruption, while citizens demanded accountability. A press conference was hastily arranged, where Captain Muller and other top officials pledged internal reforms and promised to rebuild community trust. For Ray, the fallout was both a relief and a burden. He had played a part, albeit unwittingly, in Ebony's arrest. Now he was recognized for helping expose Miller and Alvarado, but the experience left him humbled. He realized how easily personal ambition could cloud one's judgment. Meanwhile, Ebony met with federal prosecutors in a discreet office, finalizing her statements about Alvarado's gang and the corrupt network that had tried to silence her. Merrick Garland's Department of Justice, a real name recognized nationwide, was keen to use Ebony's case as a powerful example of community-led investigations that could uncover deep-seated corruption. After signing a stack of documents and ensuring her testimony was securely recorded, Ebony found herself alone in a conference room, waiting for Detective Johnson to wrap up final details. She stared at her reflection in the window, thinking back on the whirlwind of the last few weeks, the night of her arrest, the time spent in a holding cell, the bail hearing, the shooting at the fundraiser. It felt surreal. A gentle knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Detective Johnson entered, smiling. "You did it, Ebony. Your information helped us connect all the dots. Miller has confessed to some of the charges, likely trying to strike a deal. Alvarado is facing a mountain of evidence." Ebony exhaled, relief mingling with sadness. "I'm glad it's over, but it costs so much for me and for the community." Johnson placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You saved countless lives by exposing this. Don't discount that." Ebony nodded, tears prickling her eyes. "I suppose so. I never wanted it to get this dangerous." Johnson stepped aside, revealing someone standing behind her. Detective Ray Bradshaw. He entered the room cautiously, as if unsure of his welcome. "Hello, Ebony," he said softly. A small smile tugged at her lips. "Detective." Johnson, sensing the moment, excused herself. The room fell silent, tension crackling between Ebony and Ray. Finally, Ray cleared his throat. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," he began, meeting her gaze. I let my ambition cloud my instincts. I should have seen the truth sooner. Ebony studied his face, seeing genuine remorse. It's in the past now. We've both grown from this. He nodded, stepping closer. I'll never forget how calm you were, even when you were arrested. I realize now it was because you believed in the bigger picture. You knew you had to protect your operation. Ebony shrugged lightly, emotion catching in her throat. Protecting others was always my top priority. Ray's voice softened. And now you're free, truly free. Your name's cleared. The city knows you're not the criminal I once thought you were. A flicker of relief passed across Ebony's face. Yes, but the trauma won't disappear overnight. They stood there, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. The once confident cop and the calm, collected black woman he had wrongly accused were now on equal footing. Ebony extended her hand. Friends? She asked tentatively, recognizing that they'd come a long way from that hostile night in Maplewood. Ray grasped her hand warmly. Friends. Outside in the hallway, Detective Johnson spoke with an FBI colleague about the broader impact of Ebony's case. Inside, Ebony and Ray found a measure of closure. The karmic scales had balanced. Miller and Alvarado were behind bars. Ebony was exonerated, and Ray had faced his own complicity. Justice, if not perfect, felt tangible. In the weeks that followed, Officer Miller's corruption case sent shockwaves through Springfield. Multiple gang affiliates testified that Miller brokered deals for drug trafficking routes, provided police schedules, and orchestrated Ebony's frame-up. He tried to pin the blame on others, but the evidence was irrefutable. The judge handed Miller a hefty prison sentence, leaving him disgraced. Once a cocky officer, now just another criminal behind bars. Rico Alvarado's trial was a spectacle. Witness after witness detailed the gang's reign of terror. He too was sentenced to a lengthy term in a maximum security facility. Hard karma, it seemed, had arrived in full force. Ebony resumed her role at the Unity Foundation, her dedication to community service stronger than ever. She helped expand programs for at-risk youth and advocated for greater transparency in local law enforcement. Though she remained circumspect about her undercover work, word of her courage spread. She became a figure of quiet inspiration, someone who faced adversity with grace and emerged unbroken. Detective Ray Bradshaw, chastened but redeemed in the eyes of his peers, continued his police work with renewed clarity. His ambition now took a back seat to doing what was right, and he led new community outreach initiatives aimed at rebuilding trust. Occasionally, he collaborated with Ebony on community safety programs, forging an unlikely but powerful alliance. In the end, Ebony's ordeal proved that truth, once discovered, could dismantle even the most insidious corruption. The cop who once thought he had her cornered watched in awe as she stood strong. Her identity revealed not as a criminal, but as a steadfast guardian of justice. And in a city that had teetered on the edge of despair, hope glimmered anew. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster journey of cop confident in court against black woman, until she reveals her role in a powerful U.S. organization. From the tense arrest under neon lights to the explosive showdown in court, from hidden documents to a near-fatal showdown at a charity event, we witnessed how one woman's unwavering courage and a detective's change of heart exposed a web of corruption. This story reminds us that justice often demands more than one person. It requires a whole community willing to stand up for truth. If you found this story inspiring, dramatic, or simply entertaining, we'd love your support. Please hit that like button, share the video with friends who enjoy a compelling twist of crime and redemption, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales. Your engagement helps us continue bringing such stories to life. Thank you for watching.